Hey everybody, this is Noe with Walk with Yah Ministry, here to help you understand what's going on in the spirit realm. A different way of looking at the Bible, because there's more to this earthly existence than most of us are aware of. And so I'm just here to share some of the things that I'm learning to help you be better informed, to learn how to apply the Bible. You're stuck in your life, if you're dealing with oppression, if you're just feel like you're not all that you need to be, there could be reasons for that. So Walk with Yah teaches on spiritual oppression, helps to get people get rid of the oppression from their life so they can be whatever it is that they're called to be in the kingdom, because we all have a purpose, a destiny that we've been created for, to solve some type of problems, to help others. And to be honest, we don't really get our greatest sense of fulfillment of life until we're doing that. Walk with Yah also teaches on spiritual warfare, as well as how to apply the Bible to your life as well. So, I had a live stream that I thought I wanted to do on the human spirit portions and my discoveries there. But I believe I got overruled, as I believe Yah wanted me to do this particular topic tonight, which is fine. He knows what is needed better than I do. This topic that we'll be covering tonight, though, is called Beyond Deliverance. Where is the chaos coming from? The Walk with Yah live stream number 84. And I want to take this time to focus on what appears to be a breakdown of the U.S. and even the global community, because it seems like daily, that we're seeing headlines of people just kind of losing it and acting very irrationally. It seems like, yes, almost like every day. And I understand that people won't disagree, that people are going to disagree on things, but this is way beyond that. Hey, Cheryl, how are you? Glad you could make it. Hey, haven't seen you in a while. I pray everything's good with you. Hold on one second. Yes. Hey, this is going to be an interesting topic tonight. So it's going to go a little bit deep, and so I'm going to kind of, sort of, not really apologize now. But I understand that people won't agree on everything, but the chaos that we're seeing in these days is just way beyond that. We're seeing open rebellion that is just very bold, threatening, and violent if others do not conform, to these perpetrators' way of thinking. Because basically they're being bullies, and if you go against them, even though they claim peace for the common person, it will go bad. And a lot of people are, claiming they have the right side, this, that, and the other. I'm not going to get into that. Very complex. I'm just here on the side of the Bible. But a lot of this chaos and rebellion, violence that we're seeing is actually demonic. But I strongly believe it's more than that, which is what I want to talk about tonight. It's more than what people are attribute to spiritual warfare when they think about deliverance, which is why I'm calling this Beyond Deliverance. Most of the people that are familiar with spiritual warfare have a basic understanding that when we sin, that opens up the door that allows the demons to oppress us. Okay, sure. And, these are basic sins that are common to man, such as anger, rejection, fornication, just the list goes on and on. Okay, yes, I think we all kind of understand that. But at some point, we have either sinned or there's sin in our generational past or via soul tie or whatever that can still affect us. But again, these are sins that are common to man. As it states in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 13, as it mentions temptations that are common to people. Okay. I think that's simple enough to be understood by everybody. But what about the sins that aren't so common to people? The church as a whole is still very asleep to the need for spiritual warfare, as they oversimplify the Bible to their detriment a lot of times. I don't mean that to be condemning. It's just kind of how it is. I talked about this in the last Walk with Yah live stream number 83, biblical wisdom, simple or complex, where I pointed out that the Bible states very clearly that people have to pay a price for having spiritual ignorance. Again, I'm not trying to be mean. That's just what Father God says. And we're in a time where people are biblically ignorant. Even many pastors and many other religious leaders. So Walk with Yah is trying to wake people up because the church as a whole is asleep. Much of the Bible isn't a feel-good message, in case you haven't noticed. It's about overcoming our problems as we focus on and put our faith in Yah, in God, or Yeshua, Jesus. As we walk with Him, He teaches us how to overcome those problems. It often requires dying to self. Again, no big surprise there. I think we all should know that. But most believers have their head in the sand with the notion of, if I just ignore the evil, or if I just leave it alone, it will leave me alone. In case you didn't know, we are in a spiritual war, even though it may not seem directly evident. Satan wants to enslave all of humanity. And sometimes I wonder if the church understands this. But many people are overly focused on their job, their house, their white picket fence, their 2.5 kids, and the comforts of being a believer. I'm not saying that's bad, as, we do need to do those things, but we also need to be balanced. We can't just ignore the evil. And I guess I should tell you, I'm not a doom and gloom minister, even though, I confront the enemy on some level regularly. I'm a pretty happy person. And my faith is in Yeshua. That's where I get my, joy from. However, at the same time, I have an active faith, as I believe most Bible believers forget or ignore, again, that we're in a spiritual war. When I say active faith, that means that there's things that I actually do to bring His kingdom to earth. Now, it won't always be the way it always was, forever. Because we are, I believe, at the beginning stages of the tribulation. Last December, I believe Yah whispered to me, Jacob's trouble. So I gave a teaching to warn people of the coming tribulation. You can watch that in the Walk with Yah live stream number 77, Jacob's trouble and tribulation warnings. I'm not going to go over that now, but it's there for you when you need it. And right now, we are seeing global chaos. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, well, no, it's always been that way. History repeats itself. And, yes, that's to be expected. And, we got this president and he's making changes. And I hear you. But this is more than that. It says that history repeats itself. And the only thing that doesn't change is, taxes and stuff like that. It's just repeating over and over again. Well, it does until it doesn't. At some point in time, there's enough weapons in the world that are getting bigger and stronger that we could blow up the world. They didn't have that 1,000 years ago. So at some point in time, history doesn't repeat itself. So this time, it's different. And I'm going to tell you why. Oh, and by the way, this teaching, again, will not be for the faint of heart. So please be warned. I will be giving you a trigger warning as well for those that might be watching later. That may get triggered by some of the things that I say. And I'm not trying to cause fear in people, but we do need to be aware of the enemy's devices per 2 Corinthians 2, verse 11. So before I move on, please feel free to subscribe to Walk with Yah. You can do that on Rumble. You can do that through Instagram, Facebook, YouTube is where I have the most of my teachings. You can also go to the Walk with Yah website. I want to start, hopefully slowly the next month or so, start putting more content out there. I got some things that are coming up that I'm working on. We'll see how that goes. But again, connect with Walk with Yah. There's a lot of things that I share that you're not going to hear in a church. Things that you probably should know. And while I'm teaching in this live stream, please feel free to hit me up with questions, comments, and I will get to them as I can. And so just like Cheryl, unless you type text, I won't know you're here. And you can do that also as well, even after the live stream, and I'll try to get with you. If you want to donate to Walk with Yah, you can go to www.walkwithyah.com/donations. And that's Yah spelled Y-A-H. Okay. Hope you understand. I kind of had to do that there. And so, just to make sure everyone's in the know. Beyond deliverance. So, as I was saying, there is a deliverance that most people are aware of that is for normal issues, if you will. But there is what I'm calling beyond deliverance for this live stream. And what I'm saying here is that Satan has a much bigger plan in place than what we've traditionally considered as deliverance. When I hear people talking about deliverance, many times, they'll make references to Derek Prince when they think about deliverance. And don't get me wrong, I thank God for Derek Prince and the foundation that he laid. But there has been so much more revelation in regards to spiritual warfare from that time. Now, prayerfully, in the next live stream, I'll share about, what I've been learning in regards to the human spirit's role and even ministering to the human spirit. But that's not tonight. I'm just making that point. But if you're familiar with Walk with Yah, I talk about how we all disassociate, which on some level is very normal. But then when trauma is involved, that disassociation can then evolve into soul fragmentation, which is basically when we get broken, because of that trauma into different spiritual heart parts. Now, this disassociation happens on a linear scale. Basically meaning, it kind of ramps up, and you can be here in the scale or in the middle of the scale where I'm talking about this soul fragmentation stuff, or you can be on the far extreme end. Now, everybody gets spiritually fragmented just by living a normal life, which then in turn allows the demons to attack us. Those are open doors. But what happens with going beyond deliverance, again, as I'm calling it tonight, beyond the sins that are common to man? Because Satan is working on a much bigger scale than most people care to consider. What happens when people are purposefully shattered so that they can be programmed? Now, when I say programmed, that's going to mean different things to different people. And there are different types of programming for sure. Now, this is a very complex subject, but I'm trying to make this simple just for tonight, just to kind of gloss over it, to cover it in our short time together. When people get disassociated on a high level, they really aren't themselves anymore. As there are parts of them, even you, even me, that are in the spirit realm, and some of those parts might be getting tortured or even trained up for end-time activities. It makes those people that are fragmented, the more fragmented you are, the less consistent you are in your emotions, in your personalities. People may seem to be very unstable. When there's a high degree of disassociation, these people will have something called dissociative identity disorder, or DID, which basically means that they have some of their parts are so developed, some people call that 3D, that another part of them can have a different personality that takes over executive control of the body. Or, let me stick on that for a second. And so these people will tend to have different personalities. If you're a 35-year-old female, you may have a part that acts like a 8-year-old boy, or a 60-year-old man, or a 20-year-old female that thinks they're from another country, or whatever, because the brain's very complex. And even for people that don't have DID, even for people that just have normal soul fragmentation, a lot of times even those people can manifest what is happening to some of their heart parts in the spirit realm. And many times these people don't know what they're dealing with. They don't understand that these are the spiritual ramifications that affect their soul and body, but they don't know that. They don't know how to deal with it. So now, not all people are traumatized. All people that are traumatized are purposely programmed or have DID. But all those people that are purposely programmed, even with DID, are traumatized. I want to get into this next section I call the art of war. One term people may think of when they look at the happenings of today's world, they might think of this as like mass hypnosis or a mass formation psychosis. which is described in this powerful book called The Psychology of Totalitarianism. And there's actually an art to this stuff, unfortunately. You may be familiar with Sun Tzu, the Chinese military strategist and philosopher from the 15th century BC, who wrote The Art of War, which is studied by military leaders all over the globe even today. Sun Tzu emphasized the importance of subduing the enemy without fighting, advocating for strategies that avoid direct conflict. He believed that the supreme art of war is to defeat the enemy without engaging in battle, suggesting that patience and strategic planning are often more effective than confrontation. Now, this approach can involve using intelligence to outmaneuver the enemy, forming alliances to intimidate them, or even leaving an outlet for the enemy to escape, which can lead them to surrender without a fight. All right, and I want to go to my nice little slides here. So, this is basically where we are at. Again, we're seeing open rebellion. We're seeing a lot of division. We're seeing things that seem to be strategically planned. Walk with Yah taught on some of these aspects in these live streams that I have here. Because tonight we're going to be talking about some about how the Illuminati, how the Cabal, whatever you want to call them, how they operate. Even though I've touched upon some of this stuff in the past. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware of the MK Ultra super soldier types and the Monarch programming, which our government has admitted to. And even though there's other governments that do that too, there's CIA documents that have been released. Plenty of information and misinformation out there. And you can easily find this stuff online because it's been, again, released by the CIA. Just in case you think I'm making it up, there are documents out there. And so this, MK Ultra, which supposedly ended, and the Monarch stuff, which is probably still very much going on. And these are only 2 programs of just hundreds. These are very powerful tools and weapons the ideas started basically around the end of World War II in the late 1940s. So as you can imagine, it's very highly advanced at this point in this day and age, which I won't get into tonight, but it's just some mind-blowing stuff. I'll just say that programming people is very spiritual in nature, meaning demonic, as it involves a person's soul. It's popular because on the outside, a person looks and acts fairly normal much of the time. They are mostly functional, but on the inside, they have been purposely and brutally broken, shattered, and traumatized to where they are lied to and coerced to make covenants with false gods, lest they die. They are told these false gods will give them the power to live, and really that's the only way to save themselves, is to make covenants with these false gods. This is spiritual warfare on very deep levels. Now, keep this parable in mind as we progress. the parable of the dishonest manager, Luke 16, verse 8. Basically, he's saying here that it's really interesting parable, because it seems like the dishonest manager is getting commended for his being shrewd. And it says here, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. In other words, it's almost kind of a slight against believers, because like they don't really know, whereas the evil kind of does. And this is why I'm trying to educate people to help understand what's going on, because if you don't, you're going to be confused in the future. And you're not going to really understand, and it's going to kind of mess with your head. Now, the children are the future. You know, again, even the enemy knows that. That's why they're going for so many kids these days. Why they're trying to just pervert them as young as they can. They have been relentless with this, and just it's just evil. In Matthew 18, verse 6, it talks about how whoever causes the little ones to sin, that's, it's not going to be very good for them. Because what these children are being put through, those that are being programmed, and even those that are just being taught woke agenda stuff in the schools, is very horrific. But those that are being traumatized purposely develop multiple personalities. And the people that do this, their handlers or their programmers, can then program each of their personalities, to do some type of needed assignment or role for those that are just evil on a global basis. This usually starts with children for many different reasons. I'm sure you can grasp that. But these people are experts in child psychology. This actually happens more often than you think in schools, daycare centers, with foster care parents, churches, and yes, I did say churches, hospitals, etc., because these people are so brazen, and they know that most Bible believers are asleep and overly trusting, and they take full advantage of that. Because even me, myself, I didn't know about this stuff until, 4 or so years ago, where I kind of worked with some ministry that kind of dealt with this stuff, and I got a slap of reality. I believe this is part of the reason why so many children were allowed into the U.S. from foreign countries without their parents, and that they were lost track of. In a sense, they were sacrificed. As much as I hate to consider that, because these people are heartless, and they will put on a great public face. They're very shrewd, the sons of this world, more so than the sons of light. The unclean spirits feed off of the negative energy that gets generated when this trauma occurs. And I'm sorry, I really, hate to tell you this stuff, but this is the reality of the evil that has to be confronted, or at least made known about. Because believe me, I don't like it either. It's aggravating. It's just evil. Now, I made a reference to this verse in the last live stream, but I feel it's appropriate to go over it again, because we need to discern people by the Spirit and not by the flesh. And that's 2 Corinthians 5, verse 16, which says, and they're talking about Yeshua here, from now on, therefore, we regard no one according to the flesh. Even though we once regarded Christ according to the flesh, we regard him thus no longer. And I believe that we're talking about knowing a person in the Spirit. And the reason I say that is because in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 18, it talks about looking on, we are not looking on what is seen, but what is not seen. For what is seen passes away, but what is not seen is everlasting. And even in 2 Corinthians 5, chapter 1, or I'll just jump to 2 Corinthians 5, verse 1, but I'm just going to jump to verse 7. For we walk by belief, not by sight. And verse 12, for we do not again commit ourselves to you, but you on occasion to boast on our behalf, in order that you have an answer to those who take pride in appearance and not in heart. All right, I'm going to skip over that stuff. And I'm sure many of you who are thinking, I'll never run into any of these people, because that stuff doesn't happen around me, because it's in some far away place, and it happens to some far away people, and that this stuff just doesn't happen where I'm at. Wrong. Because I run into these people quite often. At least the ones that suspect they are programmed, because not everybody knows to ask. And some of these things happen in these, Timbuk3 places where there's not a lot of organization or oversight, and so it happens all over in every country around the world, whether you're in a bustling city or you're out in the middle of nowhere. These programmers, these handlers, they go to great lengths to keep these people off the radar. Now, I want to go over some common programs and roles, because when I want you to get an understanding of when I say programmed, what does that mean? So I want to give you an idea of some of these common programs. First one here is alpha, which is a generic programming that everyone gets, and it's to increase memory retention, physical strength, visual acuity. It's just a base mind control programming. You have beta, which is basically sex programming that eliminates moral convictions and stimulates primitive sexual instincts. You have the delta. This is basically for to be able to make killers, whether that's for rituals, maybe it's to take someone down that they don't want alive. They're basically assassins. And so, again, you have to understand that you may look at a person and during the day, or the time that you're with them, they seem like a very normal person. They have a normal job. But their handlers know how to switch them into that other personality. All right, let me go to the next slide here. Epsilon. That's the programming of animal alters into the subject. And these programs get layered. So in the case of this epsilon, and I'm not reading over all this stuff, you can come back to and read some of this stuff later if you want to watch the live stream later. And so basically these epsilon people, they may be programmed to think that they are a particular type of animal that has particular types of characteristics. How many of us are aware of the sex kittens that you see online, or other animal fetishes? Maybe that carries into the furries. I don't know. People that, are trying to eat in school, requesting kitty litter pans in the bathroom. And so, again, this stuff happens more often. This explains why some of this stuff is going on. There's gamma programming. This is basically psychic programming, which has to do with extra sensory powers and extra physical abilities, including long-distance mind connection and other remote viewing. Some of these people will have suicide programming, which basically, if someone gets too close to discover who they are, they're going to start having these thoughts of, I want to kill myself. And again, they don't know necessarily that that's part of them, or because when you have different parts in you, they start putting thoughts in your head, or they may come up and manifest through you, when it's case it's, much more intense and stronger. But gamma, people that have gamma programming, they may also have scholarship programming. They may speak several different languages. They very easily memorize stuff like that. And so these people will oftentimes try to sow doubt and confusion into the very existence of programmers. And so, again, the enemy tries to twist the truth, as we see in the world today, that there's so many sides to a story that you don't know who to believe. There's kappa programming, which is basically no pain. So that way, if they're doing something, a type of program that may cause pain, if that program kicks in, they'll keep on doing their mission despite the pain that a normal person would not be able to put up with. We have Phi Theta Omega programming, which is the negative spiritual programming. These are basically those that are almost kind of like priests and stuff like that, but on the dark side. They do blood rituals, sacrifices, ceremonies. These are warlocks, witches. They can do psychic killing. Again, Omegas are programmed with suicidal self-destruct programming. If someone thinks that they're about to get found out, their handler may have that programming kick in, so that way they off themselves as to not give away any type of information. Sometimes these people have information that, if found out, they could have all kinds of secrets about governments and plans and stuff like that. Some of them are messengers, and they send stuff, because you don't want to send the stuff over to computers, because that can be hacked. And so sometimes they feel it's safer to send it through people. And so I'll move on to Zeta. These are people that they have a realistic or cynical view of the world, and basically don't really have much empathy for those people that are suffering, which is sometimes necessary in the work that they do. And so this programming is intended to make subjects willingly embrace their own death as well in a ritual. Again, we are energy on some level, and when we get traumatized, when the enemy sacrifices animals and even people to draw on that energy. They do that with a lot of curses and stuff. That strengthens a curse, those type of blood sacrifices. Omicron programming has to do with drug smuggling. And so keep in mind that there are thousands of different programs, and people can be programmed in a multiplicity of ways. There are other programs such as end of the world programming, Barbie programming, New World Order programming, etc. And there are so many different governments and organizations that do this stuff. There's no consistency, and the rules change all the time because they're trying to experiment to develop the perfect super soldier, if you will. Using all kinds of methods such as torture, virtual reality, drugs, hypnosis, sound, frequencies, light, family members, or anything else you can think of. They actually have contests to see who can make the better, program person, who can make them do what, just on a command. So in this context, when I say programming, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, being programmed by the culture or societal norms, to be somewhat a functional member of society. So you're probably asking, well, Noe, what do the people with these types of programming do? Well, based on their personality types, because again, these people are experts at psychology, child psychology. They can tell from a little kid, you just give them 5 minutes, they will know what that kid will be good for, what that child will be, Are you a sex kitten? Are you a trained killer? Can we make you into this? And based on their personality types, as I was saying, what Yah has created them to be, they will twist and use for evil instead. And here are a list of some of the jobs that they will do. You have breeders, and I'm not talking just in the physical realm, although this includes the physical realm for sure. Many women are given drugs so they can give birth every 6 months. So they can be used, those babies can be used for various purposes. Prostitutes, pornography, as you can imagine, this is a big money business. And porn brings in a lot of money. They got to fund this stuff some kind of way. Some people might be media personnel. These are very bright verbal people. And so they write books and articles that are sympathetic to the Illuminati viewpoint without ever revealing their true affiliation. They will tend to do biased research in their articles favoring only one viewpoint. We see this all the time in today's media. The enemy knows how powerful the media is, which is why they're always trying to shut down conservative voices. There's helpers and cleaners. They clean up after a ritual. If that ritual's done in a school, in a hospital. I'm assuming that means they clean up the blood and whatever else there is dead. And that kind of goes in line with the next one, which are preparers. Again, they set up the tables, they set up all the equipment needed. And this, again, happens in daycare centers. This happens all over the place. Not a lot, but there's some, NGOs that we hear about that are, used for elections that are the twisty elections. They're also used for a lot of other purposes also as well that are just, again, Illuminati type stuff. You have readers, people that read from their books, their sacred books, their sacred literature, and kind of dramatize this stuff out. They're trained in ancient languages because this stuff hasn't just started, since the 1940s. This has actually been going on for hundreds of years. Actually, since the Babylon Persians, has gone by different names, such as Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry is involved in this stuff. It's again very complex. There's cutters, those people that are, trained to kill very fast, or not very fast. There's chanters, people that lead choruses of sacred songs on high holy occasions. Just like Yah has his appointed time, the Moedim, Passover, the Day of Atonement, Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. The enemy has their calendar also as well. They have, and a lot of times when these people are programmed, they will feel the effects on those particular calendar days, such as Halloween, which is one that's commonly known. But these people, they're kind of tied into those calendar ritual days, and they can feel the effects of that. So there are so many other jobs. Again, I'm just kind of going over this quickly. There's, high priests, high priestesses, trainers, punishers, trackers, teachers, couriers, messengers, officers, behavioral scientists, doctors, etc. This isn't a mom and pop shop. This is very organized, although there are competing factions worldwide. They actually fight with each other. They think that, their ideology is the way it needs to be done, or this place over here on this side of the world thinks that, they want to have it done their way. So it's not like they're all like kumbaya in an evil sense, And these people often look like, again, your everyday, normal, run-of-the-mill people with normal or even high-ranking jobs during the daytime in very respectable positions, and then they will switch. And so, again, they were developed originally to be like the perfect spy. At the end of World War II, that if the Nazis knew if they were found out that they would give up the information they had. And so to protect against this, I believe that the Nazis were working with fallen angels and that type of stuff, doing a lot of evil stuff to find this stuff out. And basically found out that you could break a person again and hide stuff within them to make them look somewhat normal. In Romans 16, verse 17, the Bible says, I appeal to you, brothers, to watch out for those who cause divisions and create obstacles contrary to the doctrine that you have been taught. Avoid them. For such persons do not serve our Lord Christ, but their own appetites, and by smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the hearts of the naive. And I'm here just to help you understand that we are in a spiritual war. I don't want you to be naive about this stuff. And so, and again, I wish I didn't have to talk about this type of stuff. And so, but I'm trying to help you prepare. Because I believe that things are happening right now that those that want the worldwide dominion aren't just going to sit back, and they're not. And there's a lot of chaos going. And again, I believe this is the reason for this, for all the stuff that I've been talking about. And so a question that you might ask then is, well, how many people are affected by this? Well, in one sense, we're all affected by it, whether we know it or not, because as the messages to these, sleeper cells, if you will, are sent, those are often done over national TV broadcasts. Most people are not going to pick up on what's being communicated because they speak in a language that most people, even myself, don't pick up on. And so a lot of things a lot of these national broadcasts and through, sports games and government stuff and, Hollywood stuff, they're broadcasting out messages that give direction that tell these people that are programmed what to do, where to go, what's the next step. But everyone only gets a little piece of the puzzle. No one really knows. Only the really, really, really high ups kind of know the big picture, because obviously they don't want any weak links. So everyone only knows a small little part of it. But if you're asking how many people are directly programmed, well, that's a different question. Because back in 2013, there was a gentleman named Russ Dizdar, that estimated there were 4 to 10 million people that may have been harmed by this type of abuse. But who really knows? And those are only the people that were directly programmed. So when I ask, where is the chaos coming from? Here's my answer. I believe there are many people that are directly programmed on some level. And again, some of these people may not even know they are programmed, because the handlers know how to create an amnesia wall to keep these people from remembering that or knowing that there's a different part of them. So therefore they're not going to believe that they've been programmed. There's going to be, there's all different types of walls. One of them is like a denial wall. They're just going to deny it and be like, not me. I go to church. And you can study dissociative identity disorder if you want to know, more about how this works. But in any case, I believe that many people that are heavily programmed are the people that are creating and leading much of the chaos in this country. And these are the leaders of, again, non-governmental organizations, or even those that are in government or other influential positions, are those that follow George Soros, or, are part of the NWO or WEF or, New World Order or World Economic Forum, or whatever group that is looking to create a one world government by creating division, chaos, misinformation, and are against the Bible. I mean, that's a very loose statement, I know, but that's how the demons operate. And there's things that the demons can't do, that they need people to do for them. And as Madeline said, God allows chaos to bring forth his greater order. Yes, that is true. It helps, though, if we have an understanding, as it says in the Bible, where my people perish because they have no vision. So sometimes if we don't have like a sense of the bigger picture, it's going to cause us to be more unstable and not trusting or confused. So I'm trying to help people understand there's a much bigger picture here. So when you start seeing this chaos in the world, you'll be like, oh, kind of get it. God's still in control, and this is just a spiritual warfare tactic of the enemy. Cheryl, yes, I'm glad you have, or at least aware of Russ. Again, they're unfortunately kind of dark and dismal. And so, but if you ignore that, totally, I think we need to have some balance. Like, a lot of times we do have to face the evil. Even as the Bible says, we have to expose the evil. And so maybe not necessarily on the way that I do it, and I don't do it the way that some of these other people do it that I've talked to, because I'm like, you people are crazy. They're going in and busting in doors, recovering some of these people. And I'm like, oh my, and they probably think I'm crazy, but anyways. So what I'm not saying is that every person is programmed. At least not, like the programs I was giving earlier. Because some people are just easily swayed to follow others, whether it makes logical sense or not. So, there's that sheep mentality. Like if someone's going to go crazy and, some people believe that that's what happened on January the 6th, that there was plants in there. And so those few led the masses and the masses just followed. Same type of, concept. As Madeline says, there's a reason Jesus taught us to speak shalom when we enter a room. It literally means all chaos and anarchy flee. I do agree with that. However, though, I do believe that, at least within the sessions that I've been in, sometimes I'll tell the demon, no, don't do this, or whatever, and they don't necessarily respond. Now, I'm not saying that may not happen differently in the future, but at this point in time, sometimes some of those, prayers that we hope work don't always work. And so sometimes it's more of a battle than what we think. Okay, so the question becomes, so now what? Actually, Madeline, I know you may not have been here for the beginning, and that statement, we've all been programmed since birth by the darkness. And so, yes, in some degree, yes, by society and stuff like that. Earlier in this live stream, I was giving specific programs of, and some of the roles and stuff that the Illuminati cabal is doing, which is a much deeper, intense, more core level type of programming. If that helps, if you want to go back and watch that. And so the question becomes again, so now what? So I don't really minister to those that have been heavily induced by satanic ritual abuse, SRA, also known as survivors. Generally speaking, to undo all of what has been done to them in ministry takes years. And it's very intense and deep at this point. I know many people that think all that is needed is, the blood of Jesus, and that you're still not placed because you don't have enough faith. And that's really an ignorant response. I hear that from people that don't know about spiritual warfare. And so, again, not trying to be condescending, I'm just saying you might need to learn some more and maybe do some deliverance and kind of see how it really works instead of just working on the sidelines. Many times churches don't want to acknowledge these people, these survivors, or what they're going through, which I can partially understand because it's very intense, because you don't know what to do about it. And yes, I've talked to, some of these people that have been programmed through SRA. One person I formerly knew was a programmer herself that actually got saved and now is trying desperately to help those that used to be in her condition. I've talked to and have ministered to a number of people that have some level of programming as well. Even some of my current clients. It's not as uncommon as you think. When ministering to them, it's very, common to run into gatekeepers and programmers, the actual handlers themselves, the soul fragment part of them that are actually in their being that had to be dealt with. And a lot more than that. It's just... I'm just trying to educate this stuff and how it works, and I'm not even really getting into a lot of it. As I said earlier, at this point, I find it generally takes a very long time and a lot of resources to minister even to one SRA programmed survivor. And that's even if you know what you're doing. And I'm not saying I do. I'm sure there are some ministers that are much better at it, than others, than I am. But overall, there's not many ministers that work at this level, relatively speaking. So in terms of what to do, I don't have much to offer the average church goer. This live stream is more informational than anecdotal. Again, I'm not trying to cause you to fear, but I do hope that this helps you understand that we are in a very spiritual war, even if you believe the chaos will just pass. I think the past is behind us and that we're entering a new normal. Now, if you encounter a person that you think may be programmed, and it's hard to say because it won't be overtly obvious, you, of course, can pray to Yeshua or call in some angel help. Yes, we can all do that. Even as, Madeline said, hey, speak shalom. That could work. I'm not saying it won't. But it may not either also as well. Now, of course, it would help if more people learn about spiritual warfare. And I also think that this is why developing the human spirit is vital as well. Because that's another resource that Yah has given us to use. So, I'm going to slowly start bringing this to a close. I do pray and believe, though, that at some point, Yeshua will give revelation on how to minister to these people more quickly and effectively. I know some people that are hoping for a way to do mass deliverance on some of these survivors, but they're not there yet. They're still struggling. It's still a challenge, very challenging. But for us to learn, for Yeshua to give that revelation, that oftentimes comes from those that are asking and seeking and knocking and doing the hard work of working in these fields. That's normally where it comes from. Those more so than just, a playbook dropping out of heaven with step-by-step instructions. We generally have to grow in authority in some areas. Again, not that you have to deal with the stuff and be a frontline person, but you don't necessarily want to be ignorant either. So, am I saying that all is lost and that Yeshua never saw this coming? No, not at all. I'm just saying we have quite the fight before us. But knowing is half of the battle, right? I'm not, again, saying that you even have to be on the front line. I'm trying to just make people aware to let you know that you have some type of part to play, even if that's indirectly. Even if that's, praying for this type of stuff, praying for this stuff to be revealed, praying that, others will, that an army of people that, will be raised up. The Bible says to pray for the workers. In 1 Chronicles 12, verse 32, the Bible says of Issachar, that men who had an understanding of the times. And we need to have an understanding of the times that we're in. I believe the walls of the spirit realm, the veils, are thinning, and that there's going to be a lot more spiritual activity, both good and bad, that's coming. And so, but again, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to help you be informed, give you some type of understanding and hence comfort. I don't know if anyone has any, questions, comments, I will do my best. Again, this isn't an area that I specialize in. I did take an interest into it at some point in time, and I found out how deep it was, and it really kind of blew my mind. But again, I run into these people that I don't want to say all the time, but I don't want to say, it's very rare either, that do have some level of programming, that came in from their childhood, and so this stuff's been going on for a while. Again, the world governments have been doing this stuff for a long time. And so going back to that Sun Tzu thing, if they can figure out how to tear apart a society, without them having to fire a shot, without their people having to get hurt, if they can come in covertly and no one even knows they're there, for them, they're like, oh, well, that's a win. Except they don't know, well, maybe they do know, the doors that they're opening. I do think some of them do know that what they're going for is spiritual rewards, even if that's demonic. When I'm dealing with some of these people in the spirit realm, they're like, yep, I know I'm going to hell, but I want the power, or, whatever it is. And so maybe some of these people actually do know. That wouldn't surprise me. So that's what I have for tonight. Again, I wanted to share some of the spiritual, human spirit portion stuff that I've been learning for tonight, but I believe that Yah wanted me to deliver this message to help those understand where we're at, to understand the battle that is in front of us. So, I hope this helps. We can't just look at the good things of the Bible and that we that we all like, we all enjoy. I do too. But there's some things, there's some evils that we can't ignore. And so, but I pray that this helps you. Please leave your comments. Share this ministry with your friends, because many people don't know what it is that we're battling. And I just ask that you would pray for me, that, I would say what he has me to say, that, my needs would be met as I'm in full-time ministry. And just remember, maybe your miracle could be next. Shalom, and we'll see you next time.